GMGM. One minute, just setting everything up. Good morning, everyone. Take a quick look at the XRP price chart, and off the bat, nothing real new has changed. Still holding this line. A lot of people panicking around tariffs. I don't see it. It just seems like to me. One of the things that's kind of funny is like Trump ran on tariffs, and now everyone's freaking out about the tariffs everyone was bullish about prior to Trump coming in. So there's going to be some event coming up here that's going to take the market and make it snap out of kind of the current zone it's in. I think if inflation continues to come in low and growth continues to look good, then it's going to be hard for the market to really react too negatively moving forward. And the cryptocurrency market has already kind of shaken out a lot of this tariff news. The entire stock market has been hit much, much harder than a lot of what we're seeing here. So I think until we're proven right on the impact of the tariffs on cryptocurrency, or until the market starts to figure it out and get ahead of it, then I think we're just kind of in a position where we're down to the overall opinion. It seems like the overall opinion seems to somehow think tariffs are bad for cryptocurrency. I don't really see it like that. Um, duh, 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 duh. The stock market in 2022, XRP would have been back to 160 in a heartbeat. Yeah, there's a ton of resilience on XRP right now. It's pretty crazy to watch. I mean, we've really just been leveling. The rest of the market really is not held up at all like XRP. It really hasn't. And I think there's a reason for that. Something I heard the other day was that Paul Adkins had to disclose his cryptocurrency portfolio. Did anyone actually catch that? I heard some rumors floating around and I couldn't confirm it. Let me see if I can find something real quick. Crypto Clay, good to see you. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so Paul Adkins, the new SEC chair, looks like doesn't hold any Bitcoin. So he holds equity in Anchorage Digital. He owns equity in Securitize, and he owns equity in Off the Chain Capital, which is a cryptocurrency focused fund. So very interesting. Paul Adkins, the new SEC chair, just taking a look at where he's actually positioned. He's actually positioned more in companies being Anchorage Digital, Securitize, and Off the Chain Capital, which is pretty cool to see. But those are that's sort of where he is positioned, which is interesting because it's less on the cryptocurrency side per se, but he's obviously very bullish on the industry as a whole, not just Bitcoin. So it's just cool to see that. Doesn't seem like he's really a Bitcoin maxi, which is great for the new head of the SEC. I'm taking a look at what that is right now, Taylor. This is a pretty easy way for me to throw stuff up. I don't know if I have desktop audio.
As an economic historian.
Can you guys hear the video? Just let me know if you can hear this real quick.
I think as an economic historian and someone who's been in markets.
Do you guys hear that? Yes? Oh, perfect. Oh, look at that. Nice. Okay, cool. That's a nice, easy way for me to throw stuff up on the screen that you guys send. I didn't know I could do that. I thought, it's so funny. I'll put so much effort into routing audio because the setup has gotten so complex. I put so much effort into routing audio, and then it won't work. And then like there is no way based on my current setup, I thought that was going to work, and it works perfectly. So there you go. And thank you, Taylor, for sending that over. We should be able to take a look at this then. Very, very nice. And I'll do, there we go. All right, cool. Let's see what this is.
I think as an economic historian and someone who's been in markets for 40 years, I actually think I'm starting to look like it now. It is, I think we're also at a unique moment geopolitically, and I could see in the next few years that we are going to have some kind of a grand global economic reordering. There's something on the equivalent of a new Bretton Woods, or if you want to go back, like something back to the steel agreements or the Treaty of Versailles. There's a very good chance that we are going to have to have that over the next 4 years, and I'd like to be a part of it. I've studied this. I think it's kind of a unique skill set. I think as an economic historian and someone who's been in markets for 40 years, I actually think I'm starting to look like it now. It is, I think we're also at a unique moment geopolitically, and I could see in the next few years that we are going to have some kind of a grand global economic reordering. It was something on the equivalent of a new Bretton Woods, or if you want to go back, like something back to the Steel Agreements or the Treaty of Versailles. There's a very good chance that we are going to have to have that over the next 4 years, and I'd like to be a part of it. I've studied this. I think it's kind of a unique skill set. I think as an economic historian and someone who...
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Hold on, I want to cut back to kind of the middle there.
A grand global economic reordering. It was something on the equivalent of a new Bretton Woods, or if you want to go back, like something back to the Steel Agreements or the Treaty of Versailles. There's a very good chance that we are going to have to have that over the next 4 years, and I'd like to be a part of it. I've studied this. I think it's kind of a unique skill set. I think as an economic historian and someone who's been in markets for 40 years, I actually think I'm starting to look like it now. I think we're also at a unique moment geopolitically.
Very interesting. Oh yeah, no, I know I was looping in. There was a couple things I wanted to listen in there. I wonder where he's exposed. Let's see. Let's see what he has. See what do we got on disclosures for him. Yeah, that's just how I listen to videos. Sorry guys, I listen to videos like I'll listen to them like 3 or 4 times over. Okay, so it looks like Scott Best is pretty new to cryptocurrency. All he has is the Bitcoin ETF. Doesn't look like he's got anything else. He's obviously he's just got a very, very standard portfolio. He's got some like a bunch of just all ETFs, which is kind of fun, which is kind of cool to see. He's got some traditional ETFs, some tech ETFs, just like QQQ, NASDAQ. He's got some gold ETFs. So he just seems like a very, very standard kind of guy, which is interesting. But very, very interesting clip there, Taylor. I appreciate you sending that over. It shows that they're definitely looking at something at a magnitude that's much larger than I think a lot of other people are thinking. I mean, they're thinking about global monetary reordering, and I just want to know more about it, right? That's why I was listening back to see if there's any hints. Is that like moving away from a debt-backed system? Is that like changing global trade? Like, I'm just curious, like where their heads at in terms of what that entails. Um, Coinbase applying for futures for the CFTC is bullish. Yeah, it's definitely a big market infrastructure thing. I don't think it's that bullish on the spot side. Like, once you get into a lot of the futures trading and derivatives and stuff like that, it does get like, you end up getting a lot of paper products. And those can be used to manipulate markets. Now it's much harder to manipulate cryptocurrency because you can always see how much is there and stuff like that. But it's less exciting for me than the actual usage of the assets. Oh, yep. Taylor, you're on one this morning. This is one of the best clips I've seen. I'm not sure if people have seen this either, so this is awesome.
Do you believe that there can be two existing world reserve currencies to simultaneously exist?
I do, and I think that could happen. I think it's quite realistic that a lot of the world is just done with the dollar as their reserve currency. And I think that there's a lot of places that are willing to try something else. And one of my scenarios, and I don't think it's going to play out quickly, but like one of my wild case success scenarios for a digital asset is if countries start to realize that the US dollar is not going to be the reserve currency forever. Other things are going to be the reserve currency. And the same thing that we saw with banks, like people, when we started selling software to banks, people would say to me, why would a bank use something that like you guys were selling them when they could use something that was like made by banks? And what they didn't realize is that, only like 10 banks in the country, on the planet, are Deutsche Bank, HSBC, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan Chase, like the ones who would build a system that the entire planet would run on. For the rest of the banks, that's 6,000 smaller banks, those are their biggest, strongest competitors. Those are the entities they hate the most. They would not want to use the system built and maintained by them because it's going to be biased in favor of them, their biggest and strongest competitors. And I think the same thing could happen to nations. Like every nation would love for their currency to be the world reserve currency. That's helped the US, that's grown the US economy, quote unquote, unfairly by leaps and bounds for decades. And every other country would be like, yeah, we'd like to have the world's reserve currency. But the only countries that could possibly pull it off is the US holding its position, maybe the EU, maybe Russia, maybe one or two others. But realistically, most countries know that if there's going to be a new world reserve currency that's a country's currency, it's not going to be them. And so they might actually prefer a currency that nobody can control to one that's controlled by their largest geopolitical rivals. And so that's like what I think is the biggest possible success scenario for digital assets. If these countries are like, okay, well, the US dollar can't hold on forever, but it's not going to be our currency because no one's going to want to repeat the US dollar scenario. Nobody but the EU wants the EU to replace the dollar, right? Nobody but Russia wants the ruble to replace the dollar. Nobody but China wants the yuan to replace the dollar. So maybe they could settle on a currency that nobody could control rather than one controlled by their most powerful geopolitical rival. So if you want a success scenario, that's the one that I think is the most likely.
But the money question is, how do you get everybody to agree?
Well, I mean, they might agree if the alternative is that their geopolitical rivals force some new replacement for the dollar that's not, if they just replace, the old boss with a new boss. If the choice is no boss, if that happens to make a bunch of cryptocurrency people rich, I don't think they're going to see that as too much of a minus.
That's good.
Yeah. It was great talking to you guys.
I got one.
That's one of the best clips out there. It really is. It's one of the best clips out there because if you listen very closely in the beginning, he prefaces it by not saying this is some unrealistic scenario.
Do you believe that there can be two existing world reserve currencies to simultaneously exist?
I do, and I think that could happen. I think it's quite realistic that a lot of the world is.
I think it's quite realistic, which is very cool to see. Just want to quickly cover something else. And this is not to call out anyone, but just information. I have seen this quoted a lot, which is like the Elon Musk 104 million or 104 billion XRP breakdown and his investment. But guys, these articles on Binance are just like there's no actual source, and like it's just like you can't put a lot of trust in just these random articles posted. You just don't know anything about it. And if Elon Musk did hold XRP, like everyone would know about it. Like every single person on X would be tweeting about it. So like you just got to be careful on stuff like that. Like anyone can kind of go up and get like an article posted, but like if it's not if there's no one actually like important like talking about it, then like it's probably not real. So could Elon Musk hold XRP? Absolutely. Would I be basing my knowledge off of that article? Probably not. I don't know what Binance's standards are for someone to go in there and post something, but I've seen a lot of stuff posted on Binance's news feed that wasn't actually real. So no, never calling anyone out or anything like that. It's just really important to realize that some of the information that can get circulated can be pretty, you just want to double check it. You want to make sure that like it's actually coming from somewhere you trust. And like, if Elon Musk was holding XRP, everyone in the market would be like freaking out because there would be proof. And until there's like some level of proof, you know, I just can't put a lot of stake in it. Let me ask this question. Why would Elon not hold XRP? Well, the obvious reason why I don't think Elon would hold XRP if he doesn't would just be because he hasn't put the time and effort in to fully understand it. Like there's going to be tons of transformational technologies that Elon Musk misses out on because he's so focused on so many different things. Like he's a genius. He can do so much, but at the same time, it's like he can't be involved in absolutely everything that will ever be transformational or successful in the world. So, you know, I don't know. It's very possible that he is, and I'm kind of on the impression that he is, but I just, you know, why would he not? Well, I think it's also very possible that it's just not something he's paid a lot of attention to. He hasn't necessarily always been like a huge cryptocurrency person in general. So I think it's very possible he is. I also can see a scenario where he just hasn't really dug into it as much as he could. Rocky Mountain Jack, thank you so much for the $5 donation. But always be careful just of articles and stuff. You just always got to really look into it. And you can get to the truth pretty easily. United States unemployment rate comes in higher than expected to 4.2. Okay, we can take a look at unemployment. Crypto Classics call me crazy. I'm trusting the Elon wallet with his name on it. No, there's been a lot of interesting things and ties, and don't get me wrong. Like, don't get me wrong. I find that stuff very interesting as well, but at the same exact point, one day we'll know. Unemployment. So we are seeing a bit of an uptick in unemployment right now. This is that long-term data we're tracking. And yeah, nothing crazy yet, but clearly we're kind of moving in that direction back upwards. So wouldn't be surprised if we did get a bit of a and then back down or something like that. Tough to say for sure, but there's no question in my mind that this is a very cyclical chart, and you probably do get some level. Can I put this on log? Probably looks better at a log chart. Yeah, so you do have some unemployment coming in. That's the Federal Reserve's mandate to start cutting. So I think that's why the market's reacting actually kind of favorably to the unemployment numbers, just because the market realizes that we're probably a lot closer. today. I just saw, you know, I just saw a post that was super interesting. This is like the kind of stuff that I don't really get. Let me pull this up real quick. It's interesting. One minute. Like, this is the kind of level of like analysis people are doing, and I just don't see it. Like, tariff economic Armageddon crushing tech. iPhones may rise from $1,000 to $3,500, slowing AI progress. Like, how do we raise tariffs to like 10 to 50% and get a 350% increase in the price of iPhones? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, even if everything was tariffed at 50% in the iPhone, how is the cost of the iPhone going to go up 350%? It also says slowing AI progress. Like, what AI progress does Apple even have? Most of the big AI companies are software companies in the United States. How is that going to slow AI progress? So, like, I don't know, like, a lot of people just, in my opinion, are not analyzing this tariff stuff correctly. How is an iPhone going to go from $1,000 to $3,500 when like the largest tariffs out there are in China and they're in the 35%? Frankie Crypto says Mickle spews truth, not opium. I appreciate that. No, I just try to keep it 100 with you guys. Like, just give you guys exactly what I'm thinking at any given point. And if you agree with it, that's great. And if you don't, at least I gave you something else to consider, you know? I always just try to stick as close to like what my perspective is as possible. But yeah, I don't know. Like, a lot of this analysis on the tariffs, like, someone tell me how an iPhone goes from $1,000. Let's see what Grok says about this. I'm curious what Grok will say about this post right here. Tariff is 25%. iPhones will be. Yeah, so Grok says that so here's the most important part. Grok says if all of it was passed on to the consumer, which all of it will not be passed on to consumer, then you'd probably see a $1,200 iPhone, not a $3,500. So like, a lot of people just not getting it. So between a $1,200 iPhone and a $1,500 iPhone, if all of the tariffs directly impact the consumer one for one, which is like totally unrealistic as well, because like that's just not how markets work. When tariffs happen, everything doesn't instantly revalue to the price of what the tariff was put on. The companies eat a lot of what the tariff is put on because companies don't want to change their prices because they want to stay competitive. So like so much information being put out there that like I just don't think makes a lot of sense. It's all around like this Armageddon scenario for these tariffs, and like people like the analysis is just so off in my opinion. Well, androids aren't going to be much better, I'll tell you that right now. It really has to do with things produced in the United States versus things not produced in the United States. It's what Trump is trying to do, just so people are aware of like the goal here, is Trump wants to make it so things are made in the United States. If you want to sell to the United States, it has to be made in the United States. And like, I don't think that's such a bad idea. Everyone wants to sell to the United States. We have the most active consumer in the world. Like, make your business strategy. Either you sell into the United States and eat a tariff, or you set up shop in the United States and employ Americans. Like, it's not like this thing. Like, if a company makes a decision that right now they'd rather produce overseas and then ship into the United States, they're making that on a cost decision. They're not making it based off a security decision, off a employment of the United States decision. So if you want to do that, then like you better have a good reason for doing that, or else just make it in the United States. Like, what's the point? What's the point in shipping all of your stuff to China just to ship all of this stuff back to the United States for people to buy? American products will be cheaper to buy, and that's good. I agree. And like, people just aren't thinking like long term. Like, do I think tariffs are like this golden ticket to like fix? No, not at all. But like, it makes sense to have some universal tariff. Like, we have a universal tariff on us. All of us have a universal tariff on us. It's called taxes. Why would other countries just sell into the United States not have some kind of tariff on them? See, like yes, Abs, absolutely. I've been thinking about that, Abs. I have to get back on there. I think we went back and I need to figure that out. I'll make it something I prioritize very soon here. Just been so busy. Tariffs are not good nor bad. I generally agree with that. They're a tool. And you should analyze a tool as a tool. Guess what? Tariffs are a tax on the American consumer, whether it's dollar for dollar or not. Not necessarily. In like, don't get me wrong, tariffs can be a tax on the American consumer, but like, where would it show up, right? Like, where would that show up? At the end of the day, if tariffs were a tax on the American consumer, and it was like that easy to say it that way, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but like, if it was in fact just a direct tax on the American consumer, then the numbers would come out. You would see it in inflation. And like, the simple fact of the matter is like, let's look at Trump's first term and tariffs 1.0. In tariffs 1.0, Trump got elected in Trump's tariffs went into effect somewhere around here, 2017, 2018. And there was no marginal impact. Oh, sorry. Trump got elected in the green circled region here, and there is no marginal impact on inflation. And like this, those are the kinds of things. It's like, so like, if tariffs happened in 2017 and 2018, Like, why were there no marginal hits on inflation? And it's because at the end of the day, tariffs are inflationary, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always passed on to the consumer. Because if a company wants to stay more competitive, then tariffs might just eat into their own margins, right? If a company's selling at a 45% margin and they run the calculation and they're like, all right, to stay competitive, we'll just eat these tariffs and keep selling to consumers at the same price, then they'll just eat it themselves and pass on the same thing to the consumer. Now, there's other companies that can't really do that because their margins are already so thin. But there's plenty of companies that can eat a tariff and go and figure out how they can make their product cheaper in different ways. So is that the case every single time? No, there's absolutely times where it is passed on to the end consumer and the end consumer does have more expensive products. But there's many cases, and like we're looking at it from 2017 to 2018, there's a lot of tariffs introduced and there's almost no marginal impact on inflation. It very much stayed at right around 2%, whereas the Federal Reserve's goal is. So just some things to consider there. Well, it's also important to realize that, like, I don't like Trump's not doing the calculation, right? Like, Trump is working with some very high level economists in terms of what they think an appropriate plan is. There's no way Trump's in the back room with a calculator being like, all right, this tariff here, this tariff here. So there's high level people really digging deep into the tariff situation. Not to say that they couldn't also make mistakes. They could absolutely make mistakes. Silver Days, good to see you, man. And since we're here, long-term inflation rate in the United States, a lot of people panicking about inflation right now. But all things considered, I mean, inflation is a slow-moving beast, and you know, this is not a. Where was I concerned about inflation? I was concerned about inflation all through here. Am I concerned about inflation down here? No, not really. This is where I get less concerned with inflation, right? When inflation is ripping upward at an exponential rate towards 9%, like, that's where things are scary. When inflation is hovering at the Federal Reserve target, that's where I'm not so concerned about inflation. Like, regardless of even what the numbers are for tariffs, it's just that Trump just wants a standard pot of revenue to things that are sold in the United States. It's like, think of it less as a tariff and thinking of it as like, we pay income tax, we pay sales tax. Think about it as just a new tax that comes from countries selling into the United States. That's not necessarily directly taxed on the consumer level. And if you can start taxing a lot of these big corporations selling into the United States, That's great. JP Morgan raises recession chances to 60%. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. There's a lot of, we'll see if they get that right. If there is a recession, I believe it will be more of a paper recession. Remember, we did have a recession a couple quarters ago, and then they just decided they were going to change the terminology and say that wasn't a recession. So I'm a little skeptical of recessions in general and like how they're categorized and like what the actual qualifications are and everything like that. Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct, Frankie. And it is interesting to talk about it from there because there is an international perspective as well. And like, it's very important to realize like a lot of what I bring here is from the a United States perspective. And like, there's a lot of other perspectives around the world. And I'll sit here and fully admit that I am not an expert on world economics, right? Like I focus a lot on the United States because the United States system is hard enough, and to branch out to every single other system out there, that's where things get a little dicey. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've done and thought about this on high levels for every single country's impact for tariffs. That would just be a lie. It's a lot of a United States perspective, and with people all over the world, I absolutely admit that different countries are going to have completely different looks on what all this looks like. A lot of green candles. All right, we'll ping back to XRP real quick. Oh yeah, wow, look at that. It must be the unemployment news, which is how backwards the market is right now. We get some bad unemployment news and the market's like, let's go. This is perfect. What a world we live in. Great discussion going down in the tariffs in the chat though. And I totally realize that everyone has like a different perspective on this kind of stuff, and we'll just see how everything ends up playing out. But I do appreciate everyone being respectful down there and understanding that, like, you know, none of us are future that can predict the future. We're all just trying to analyze this and see what happens. Yeah, I saw the initial job numbers. Did we get more job numbers? Because the United States seemed to react. I mean, the economy, oh man, prices seem to have reacted pretty good to the first unemployment numbers. All right, guys, with that said, I'm going to cut it here. Guys, thank you so much for coming. You guys are all the best. I think this was actually a really interesting discussion this morning, even though there wasn't a lot of news to really jump into in terms of things new. Very interesting to talk about some of these macro things. Always appreciate everyone's comments in the chat, even if we might have differing opinions. I mean, one of the reasons I do this is so that I can hear other people's opinions, and being able to read other people's opinions. And Frankie, it was great listening to some of your insight as well. That's how I reevaluate some of the stuff I talk about and think about. So if it wasn't for you guys giving me different perspectives and bringing information to me on these lives, like, I wouldn't be cued into that. And like one of the most important things for me is to have as much information as possible, because I might have my own opinions. But one of the things that I believe makes us all smarter is if we're willing to evaluate other opinions and really just say, okay, is this a reason I'm right? Is this a reason I'm wrong? I have no allegiance to kind of what my own pride is or what my own opinion is on any of this. But it's really for me to say, okay, there's a 40% chance I think I'm right, a 30% chance I think Frankie's right, a 20% chance I think this person's right. And maybe we're all right in our own way. And how do we take that and pull that into a thesis that's really holistic and covers everything that we're all thinking? So just something to consider, even if maybe I'm not directly like, okay, this is the answer right off the bat. It all goes into my long-term thinking, and that's why these live streams are totally invaluable in terms of just creating a much better understanding of how the world works. Guys, thank you so much for coming. You guys are the best.